Hey everyone, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a total game changer, an absolute classic that literally built the modern business world. We're talking about Andrew S. Grove's legendary 1983 book, High Output Management. Now, Grove was a former refugee who ended up becoming the iconic CEO of Intel. And he did something amazing. He took his brilliant engineer's mind and applied it to the messy, sometimes chaotic world of human organization. So let's just dive right into these principles and see how they can completely flip the way you look at your daily workflow. Right out of the gate, Grove hits us with this massive paradigm shift. Listen to this. A manager's output equals the output of his organization. Now, we usually measure our value by what we do ourselves, right? The reports we write, the code we ship, the deals we close. But Grove, he says, no way. Management is a team sport. Your individual contribution isn't the main metric anymore. It's actually all about the collective output of the people you lead and influence. Okay, let's look at our roadmap for bridging cold efficiency with human leadership. 1. The manager as multiplier. 2. The breakfast factory. 3. Mastering managerial leverage. 4. Meetings and decision-making. 5. Task-relevant maturity. And finally, 6. Motivation and peak performance. So moving right into section 1, the manager as multiplier. Now, if you want to scale your impact, you've got to ask yourself a really direct question. What is a manager's actual output? When you finally clock out at the end of the day, what did you physically or conceptually produce? The answer is usually pretty counterintuitive, even if you've been managing people for decades. And that brings us to this brilliant little equation. Managerial output equals your team's output plus the output of the neighboring organizations under your influence. It's that simple. You are not the doer anymore. You are the enabler, the multiplier. Think about it. If you spend an hour helping a coworker in a totally different department clear a massive bottleneck, you've just boosted your own output. Why? Because you influenced their success. Your whole job is to make everyone around you faster, smarter, and way more efficient. All right, section 2, the breakfast factory know. Okay, I want you to imagine any production process as a black box. You put inputs in on one side, stuff like raw materials, labor, time, and out pops a final output on the other side. Now, keeping a close eye on this black box is exactly how we spot inefficiencies. And the really cool part, it literally does not matter if you're manufacturing ultra-complex microchips at Intel or just, trying to get a hot breakfast on the table without burning the toast. The mechanics of the black box, they stay exactly the same. So how do we actually optimize this breakfast factory? Well, first, you identify the limiting step. Let's say boiling a perfect 3-minute egg takes the absolute longest. Okay, boom, that's your limiting step. You actually have to build your entire production flow backward from that one longest task. Next up, you create time offsets. You wouldn't put the toast in at the exact second you start boiling the water, right? You synchronize parallel processes so everything's ready and hot at the exact same time. And third, you balance your capacity and manpower. Finding that limiting step is the absolute secret sauce here. It's what lets you optimize workflows, clear out those annoying bottlenecks, and just keep the whole machine humming along. Which brings us to section 3, mastering managerial leverage. Now, I want you to ask yourself honestly, which side of this list dominates your workday? Leverage is basically the output generated by a specific activity you do. High leverage activities, things like setting clear objectives, training a new hire, or making a decision that completely unblocks a project. Those act like rocket fuel for your team. They affect tons of people and have massive long-term impacts. On the flip side, low-leverage activities, like micromanaging routine stuff or drowning in non-essential admin, those are just anchors. They totally drain your time and give you almost zero team output in return. So according to Grove, there are basically only 3 ways to bump up your productivity as a manager. First, you can increase the speed at which you work. But let's be real, there's a biological human limit to that, right? You're going to burn out. Second, you can increase the leverage of your current activities. Or third, you can shift your mix of activities entirely, moving from lower to higher leverage tasks. When you consciously shift your focus toward those high leverage activities, like proactive planning or, say, deep training, you are literally shaping tomorrow's outcomes instead of just constantly running around putting out today's fires. All right, let's jump to section 4, meetings and decision-making. Now, what's really interesting here is how structuring your meetings transforms them from those soul-crushing time wasters into genuine performance drivers. Think about one-on-ones. These should be subordinate-driven. They are absolutely vital for coaching and checking in on someone's development. Then you have staff meetings, which are all about team coordination and sharing critical information. And finally, operation reviews for broader organizational alignment. Look, meetings aren't the enemy. Unstructured, purposeless meetings are the enemy. When you use these formats the right way, meetings actually become your highest leverage tool. And what is the primary product of all those meetings? Decisions. Grove lays out this incredibly effective 3-step ideal decision-making process. Step 1, free discussion. You have to actively fight groupthink here. Seek out dissenting opinions, invite the pushback. Step 2, a clear, timely decision has to be made. No lingering in limbo. And step 3, and honestly, this is usually the hardest part, full support. Even if someone vehemently disagreed during the discussion phase, once the decision is locked in, they have got to fully commit to making it happen. Moving right along, Section 5, Task-Relevant Maturity Explained. This brings us to a really foundational concept, task-relevant maturity, or TRM for short. TRM is a subordinate's experience, their job knowledge, their confidence, and their motivation for one very specific task. The absolute key here is that maturity is about the specific task at hand. It has nothing to do with their overall seniority or how old they are. Like, you could have a senior software engineer who has insanely high TRM for writing code, right? But ask them to design a marketing brochure and their TRM is suddenly rock bottom. So let's look at how this directly shapes your actual leadership style. Listen, there is no one-size-fits-all approach to managing people. You have to adapt to where the employee is at. If they have low TRM for a task, you've got to be structured. Be directive, give them clear step-by-step instructions. But as they grow into medium TRM, your style needs to shift. It becomes collaborative, more supportive. You're having a two-way conversation. And then when they hit high TRM, you go full delegator. You just set the objectives, step back, and monitor the results. And finally, Section 6, Motivation and Peak Performance. You know, one of the absolute highest leverage activities you'll ever undertake is the performance review. And please don't think of it as some boring HR formality. As Grove points out, during a review, the manager acts as judge, jury, and coach. It serves a very specific dual purpose. First, you're bluntly assessing missing skills so you can actually fix them. And second, you are trying to intensely motivate that person to raise their performance curve. It's just an incredibly powerful tool for driving real growth. But here's the catch. To motivate someone, you really have to understand what drives them. And that points us straight to Maslow's motivation hierarchy. You start down at the bottom with basic physiological and safety needs, you climb up through social and esteem needs, and eventually you reach the absolute pinnacle, self-actualization. When an employee reaches the point where their motivation is self-actualization, meaning they just want to be the absolute best they can be for the sake of personal excellence, their drive to perform literally has no limit. And your ultimate job as a manager? It's to build an environment where your team can actually reach that top tier. Which brings us to our final, overarching thought for this explainer. Are you spending your time just doing, or are you truly multiplying? Seriously, think about it. Every single hour you spend micromanaging or doing a task that someone else could easily handle is an hour stolen from your true purpose, increasing the output of your entire organization. So I invite you to take a hard look at your calendar tomorrow. Find your limiting steps, laser focus on those high leverage activities, and start acting like the multiplier your team really needs you to be.